Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of the Higher Line podcast. I got a special friend today that I got to be on his podcast, so now he gets to hear my questions. And he didn't realize that before coming there was a rule when you enter the room that no matter what is asked, you have to answer. It's like truth or dare.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
No matter what happens.
To be honest with you, I think my answers would be underwhelming.
Mr. Andy Stump, thank you for coming.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
I did a little research because I'm like, there's got to be some stuff that this guy doesn't talk about. Because
you found my sister wife.
I found your sister wife. Yeah, you've been on dozens of podcasts and TV programs. You've been on Joe Rogan's podcast several times, and I'm like, people probably always want to talk about your illustrious military career, don't they?
Some do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've done some. Let's just because we have a ton of listeners that maybe are not of the same genre of some of the folks that maybe see your stuff. So who are you in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, man, that's a tough one in a nutshell because I don't actually
live in a nutshell.
I don't actually know. I mean, it's a tough question to say. Who are you?
So if I'm going to interrupt you, if I just had to answer that, I'd be like, oh, he's a Navy SEAL with a pretty famous podcast, and he broke some records jumping out of the sky.
So people will say, hey, Andy, the Navy SEAL, and I actually do my best to correct them. Like, I'm not a Navy SEAL.
You were.
I was a Navy SEAL a long time ago, almost 10 years ago next year. So I did time in the military, and when I got out, I floated around a little bit, worked in the fitness space. That's how I know
CrossFit.
That's how I know Brian McKenzie. We have a mutual friend there. And then while working for CrossFit, I did some aviation stuff. While doing that, I kind of reignited my passion for skydiving, which led to the record stuff that you had alluded to. And then somewhere in there, I don't even remember the exact year, I met Rogan because of the fundraising for the record jump. So that was actually the genesis for me to start my own podcast. When he was like, hey, you should think about starting a podcast. I'm like, well, I'll consider it. I mean, I usually take advice from somebody who's a little bit more successful in the space. It's like, hey, okay, if that guy says that, maybe you should pay attention to it. So that started the podcast. And then somewhere in all of that, I started doing public speaking, and I've done that for almost the last 10 years now, and then getting into the, brown water business as things move on. The tail end of this year, for those of you that have asked, it'll be about November. The coffee shop will open. We're doing a Black Rifle Coffee franchise in Kalispell. But I also have 3 kids. So I'm a father inside of all of that as well. I love hunting. I'm a gravity enthusiast. I like all things gravity related. I love doing jiu-jitsu, which is how you and I met. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy question to answer.
No, I just wanted to see it's fun when people ask those kinds of questions, and it's like in America, we always identify like with work. I'm a carpenter, I'm a lawyer, like when we were in Costa Rica last year, I asked that question to somebody, and I had a relationship with the local enough that he goes, it's rude here to ask somebody that.
Really?
And I'm like, that's what I said. He goes, yeah, we talk about fishing or surfing. He goes, if you just like approach somebody and say like, what do you do to feed? It's what it sounds like. How do you feed yourself?
Yeah.
And I was like,
how do you make your money?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's so weird because you go to a cocktail party. Oh, yeah. That's the first thing. So what do you do, Bob?
Actually, the coffee shop is now the best thing because they say, oh, I have a coffee shop. It's the easiest out the door answer that has almost no follow-ups.
I like that.
Because people go, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the coffee business. One thing I found a common thread of the interesting thing about the world nowadays is but most people have a trail on the internet of life, right?
Unfortunately.
And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, right? You could find like an arrest record, or not for you, but just, you have good or bad stuff. And
you can find that if you dug enough.
Yeah.
No charges were filed.
No charges. But you've done a good job of creating whatever you want the world to see is how I would perceive it. There's not a lot out there that would look derogatory, but there's this common thread of leadership you talk about a lot. And I found a video I thought this would be a good topic to touch on. I found a video where you were speaking to an organization. You looked nice, no tie. You had the frickin' top button open. Hair was a little longer, slicked a little bit.
I think it was probably the Asia Summit for Barclays.
Yeah, that was exactly it. And I'm fortunate to have many of my friends and associates in what I do come from special operations backgrounds. And something that I don't take for granted but very much appreciate is how these folks approach problem solving. And you touched on that in the discussion, which I think it'd be good for you to talk about a little bit here. Because the main premise of it was you realized outside of the SEAL teams that successful people were doing the same things that you were doing or seeing done in the teams.
Yeah, and it was more from a leadership perspective. Leadership, people say it often, it's simple, but it's not easy. The characteristics and qualities of a good leader I actually think are oftentimes harder to point out than the characteristics and qualities of a bad leader, because you can identify the train wreck. Like, oh, that's bad. But somebody who's a really great leader, it took me a long time, and I have a stack of notebooks from my time in the military, and I would write down lessons learned, mistakes, failures, and then when I saw things going right that I wanted to emulate, I would write all that stuff down. And it's actually really hard when a team is performing really well to fingerprint and point at exactly what the leader is doing to facilitate that happening. It's so much easier to say, oh, that guy's ego's in the way, or that guy's an asshole, or he yelled, you know what I mean? Like, that's easy. Mm-hmm. But really good leaders, you kind of sit back like, how did they do that? How did they bring this group of people together from a varied backgrounds and ages, everything from millennials to, boomers? I guess that would be possible, to use two common terms that are very different in this day and age. But how do you take what you have and achieve your goal? And in the military, obviously, in a combat environment, the stakes can be as high risk as they can possibly be, because a failure in leadership or a failure in execution can terminate in the loss of life. In the business world, I think oftentimes people just don't take it as seriously because it's just money, and generally it's not their money if you're talking in the business world. So for probably almost 2 years, I did this circuit where I was talking to banks, which is where that Asia Summit came from, in Hong Kong and Singapore and Australia and LA and New York and over in Europe. And not that they had a laissez-faire attitude about money, but it was very clear that the money that they were operating with, they were not writing a personal check for. So there can be that disconnect. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not much of a gambler. It's easier to say to somebody, you should go bet on that. It's a little bit tougher to whip out your own credit card and put your money down on it. Mm-hmm. So in the military, we obviously put a huge emphasis on leadership specifically, and I can only speak for inside of the SEAL community. I know actually very little about the Navy in and of itself, but the larger military. I know how special operations integrates inside of that, but I don't have a lot of experience with regular military. So in the world that I came from, there is an emphasis on leadership, both officer and enlisted. There's not a free pass based off of what your rank may be or your collar device. And the lessons that I was very fortunate to be taught were taught to the people who taught me, who were taught to the people that taught them. And I suspect that they go back all the way to when human beings started fighting each other, which is the inception of human beings. But for whatever reason, because of that background, and I think because of it's probably the splintering and the rising of the star, if you will, of military members, which I think is something new in the modern last 20 years or so after the global war on terror started. These people who are literally celebrity veterans. Mm-hmm. And at least more people now have heard about the military or are more familiar with what the military does. You can take these lessons that you learn in the military, and I would hope that a lot of businesses are fostering and teaching and training their leaders in the same way, and the reality is they're not.
Why do you think? Especially when it's so well
because
vetted.
I think because the consequences can be so extended over a longer period of time. Like the housing crash in 2008. I mean, people saw that coming in probably 6, 7, definitely early in 8. And what I would expect from a good leader, and let's say you're inside of one organization, and maybe it might it might move your station in relation to your peers and other organizations as to your profitability. But if you recognize it and you don't do something about it, you're failing in a leadership role and you're failing everybody that's working for you. But it's easy to kick the can down the road when you're talking about a spreadsheet versus a projectile coming at you. You know what I mean? Thousands of feet per second. It just seems as if
it's not an instantaneous consequence.
It's going to be over. I mean, think about it from a dietary perspective. People who eat poorly, I don't think they do that not knowing the consequences, but they know that the consequences are so far away that they'll self-justify a poor behavior because I don't have to
taste.
Yeah, I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna have a taste
Yeah,
now.
I just want
and I'll
it.
deal with it when I need to deal with it when I'm, getting cracked.
I'll be
on
better
it.
tomorrow.
Yeah, quad bypass. Starting a new diet tomorrow, but not tomorrow. Monday. Like, bitch, it is Monday. I meant the next Monday.
I meant the next Monday. Yeah.
So there's that crushing weight of the time in the military, and the whole point of all of that is the characteristics of both problem solving, to speak to what actually you were talking about, and then leadership. They're identical in the military world and the business world. It just seems as if there's a lot more emphasis in the military community because of that nature and the consequence, whereas the business world, they oftentimes can get away with not doing that. They're exactly the same. I literally take the leadership principles and characteristics, the foundational principles, the characteristics that we screen for and then we teach, and I talk to business people. I've talked to, at this point, hundreds of organizations from Fortune 50 C-suites to Fortune 100 companies to Fortune 500 companies, and I've lost track of how many business sectors I've talked in. The characteristics in the philosophy of leadership is the same, regardless of the business model. It doesn't change. There's not, like I said, 2 years of talking in the banking world. There's not banking leadership. There's
leadership or not leadership.
Yeah, and I always tell people there's two types of leadership. Good, which could also be considered effective, or bad, which is ineffective. You don't need to throw on there, hey, do you know anything about leadership for car salesmen? I'm like, yes, I do. Do you know anything about leadership for jiu-jitsu people? Yes, I do. What about school teachers? Yes.
Gotcha.
What about real estate? I'm like, yes. It's all the same shit. Anybody who puts a title on it and will tell me, and I've had this happen, they're like, well, I don't know if you would really understand our sector because, you come from the military and we specialize on this, this one particular thing. Say it's the medical field. Like, oh, so, yeah, do you guys work in teams or by yourselves? Oh, no, I definitely have a team of people. Do you guys have, strategic and, short-term goals, long-term and short-term goals you're trying to achieve? Yeah. And your communication as a leader is maybe important in how you, are you guys disaggregate? You're not on the same
budgetary
building?
constraints you get to work inside of.
I'm like, yeah, what I just described to you is actually the military philosophy. And they go, oh, yeah, okay.
So you traveled around, you did this, all these different businesses and different organizations. Seems like oftentimes organizations, they think, oh, we're going to mix it up. Instead of having this guy or that guy that we've always had come out, like a football player, we're going to get a Navy SEAL to come out. It's going to be amazing. People are going to love it. It's different. We'll get a, crazy.
He's going to tell war stories.
Yeah.
Of which I've told zero at every speech I've ever given.
But that's kind of the thought process. So then folks, how many of them have implemented? Does a lot of times, do you think it's deaf ears? And that's not, I'm going to take away, because of course you're out there working, trying to do your job.
Well, they do, same thing. So we just went to a jiu-jitsu seminar today. People have the choice. They could take on board the information and really dedicate themselves to maybe even taking a step backwards because they're going to have to change something, and then they'll
disassemble to reassemble.
And they would, even though they took a step backwards, they could be 3 steps down the road. Or are you going to keep doing what you're doing because you'll be a step and a half down the road? And so people have the choice. They can do something with it or not. I don't know if it falls on deaf ears. When it comes to leadership and the structure in the corporate world, if they really want to be effective at it, they have to find 2 things. The time to dedicate to consistently teaching people. Leadership is not something where you go one day and you listen to a PowerPoint presentation or you have a speaker come in and they talk about leadership and they use words and it's like, yay, we're all leaders now. No, you need to go and consistently and constantly be getting feedback, be training yourself, be training your people. So you have to find 2 things, time and money. They have to be willing to allocate both of those things. And it gets interesting, especially in the business world, because this didn't happen to us in the military, but there'll be situations that happen all the time where businesses buy other businesses and they consolidate. And now you have two maybe different philosophies when it comes to just operations in general, who's in charge, a different communication structure, maybe they're using different terms or analogies or acronyms or all that stuff. So companies that I think really dedicate their time to it, and I always recommend, don't try to start teaching people about leadership when they're 10 years in and you're looking at them for a mid-level or a senior level leadership position. I'll use an analogy about a driver's license. Like, how many of you decided to skip driving a car and then just showed up at the DMV on your 16th birthday? They're like, oh, hey, driving test. Like, what are the odds of that happening? Like 0. You're going to fail because you don't know how to drive a car.
Right.
If you don't teach your people about leadership and train them before you get ready to give them the corner office or the parking spot or the business card with the requisite, acronym on there, you're doing exactly the same thing, but it's just spread over years. You know what I mean? Like, there's just that we'll deal with it later attitude. So I recommend to organizations that they instill in people and they train them throughout a career, but they start upon the entrance to that organization as early as possible, and then they refine it throughout. To me, it's a much more successful approach.
It makes good sense. One of the other things you talked about was, and I don't want to word it incorrectly, but basically looking like a genius when problems would come up, but it wasn't because you were problem solving in the moment.
No, we'd already done all that.
You'd already looked at all contingencies and figured out if A happens, we do this. If B happens, we do this. Talk about that a little bit.
So all of the movies, and of which there are a lot, and the velocity seems to be still increasing and trending upward on military movies, most of them tell the story of like the family impact or shit blowing up, and grenades that somehow they're like fireballs and like vehicles go flying into the air, which I wish that happened. That's not the case. Nowhere in that does it show the actual truth of us staring at PowerPoint presentations for hours and days. So a non-extremis planning cycle for a conventional SEAL team is going to be 72 hours of planning before you submit for mission approval, get it back. Then there's going to be some probably rehearsals in there. Then you're going to go launch and go do your objective. Nothing that I just said shows up in the movies. But that's what actually lets you make the sausage, right? Like, you have to do all of this other work. And of course, we look at everything from the most likely course of action from our enemy to the most deadly course of action to the enemy. And there's 5 phases of a military operation, from insert, infill, actions on, exfil, extract. You need a primary plan for all of that, a secondary plan, a tertiary plan, and then after you have all of that, which can include phase lines and go, no go, like, hey, we couldn't get past this with the amount of fuel that we have, cool, turn around and fly back. You don't need to make those decisions in the air. Like, that would be horrendous trying to do a math problem in the middle of the helicopter in the middle of the night, trying to figure out whether you should be going or not going. Like, you need to have that shit sorted before you.
Yeah.
But then it's contingency planning. What if we lose all radio communication? It's the what ifs. And so we have this robust planning cycle, but the vast majority of the time is spent on the what ifs, the contingency planning. So I tell people the best way to make decisions in a crisis or in a crisis situation is to have already made them before you get into it. Because then you're not actually making the decision, you're following a branch diagram. If this happens, do this. If that happens, do that. And it allows you don't need any mental horsepower. So a good example would be, let's say you have 2 Blackhawks, you're in Afghanistan, you can probably fit 8 people on each, depending. So you have 16 total people. Well, let's say you get to an objective and for whatever reason the weather comes in, so you have to stay through the darkness and you're going to stay all the way through the day. Let's say you get into a firefight. And you have, before you'll ever launch a military operation, you're going to have what's called a QRF, quick reaction force. You will have to have at least identified and coordinated with who will get the call in case you get on the horn and you're like, shit's going really bad.
We need you.
Yeah, so that's part of the planning process too. They have to identify who's going to be your QRF. But another really good thing you need to work your way through before you get into the field is, what are our criteria to actually pick up the radio and call? Because if you don't, let's say you're out there and out of your 16 guys, 1 guy gets wounded, you're in a firefight. Well, should you call the QRF? It's like, well, I don't know. Let's say, what if it's a comm guy? What if it's the medic? And then it's like, we'll probably be okay. And then another guy gets hurt. It's like, is 2 enough? And Oh, and by the way, while you're trying to make this decision, you're on the receiving end of mortar fire. Like all that. Let's do that when we're in an air-conditioned space, sitting in front of a computer, rationally thinking our way through what's our minimum force required to do this. And then for a battle space commander, or the tactical commander on the ground, he hears over the radio, hey, we have 2 wounded personnel. He's immediately on the horn calling the QRF, no thought process required. And then he can figure out, what do we need to do? Do we need to move them to us? You know what I mean? So you can focus your hard drive space on things that you actually need to solve in real time, the problems that the world is going to throw at you versus, I don't know, 2 or 3. I don't know. Is it 3 or 4?
So the problem that I think about as you're describing that for most people is it takes a body of knowledge and a depth and breadth of understanding of that body of knowledge to be able to create this diagram, right? Yep. Like I could go, our friend Dan, I'm wearing his shirt, owns a bunch of restaurants. I can cook a little bit. Yeah. I can't manage a commercial kitchen full of people. I probably could for a while until all of a sudden, some shit went sideways.
Until you went bankrupt.
Right. Or I just meant so today there's a big holiday where we're filming today right before St. Patrick's Day. So there's hundreds of people at these restaurants. So everything's taxed. All the systems are, and some girl's going to call in sick because she stayed up last night. And so you start to have these problems. So I'm not the guy to solve those problems. Dan is. Dan has already got his whole...
But he could teach you.
Sure. So, how does a person... They manage an office of 10 people, or they're a small-town police chief, or whatever. Yeah. Without that... Unfortunately, in your business, people died to get that body and depth of knowledge to...
Yeah, but, when I joined in 96, there was a huge gap in actual...
Damn, you're old.
I am old. There was a huge gap of people actually having combat experience, and the only deaths up until that point, they were training accidents, which still occur. I mean, there was a guy who died post Hell Week a few weeks ago, actually, and the results still haven't come out as to why. I have my suspicions. Let's just say that the water there is not the cleanest where they do some of the evolutions for Hell Week. But it's again, the organization that you work for has to find the time and the money to make sure that you prioritize those things. We have, for junior officers and senior enlisted personnel, there are courses that they go to, mission planning, leadership, and it's a single point of failure is a very, very dangerous thing. And Dan...
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, if you don't show up to work, the business crumbles.
Gotcha. They
should be avoided at all costs. And a great rule for leaders, you should be constantly training your replacement. And the goal should be, if you're actually a good leader, what'll end up happening is, and I suspect this it can be a parallel to jiu-jitsu too, if you're actually a good coach, what's going to end up happening is you're going to teach people who will eventually be able to beat you. That to me would be the marker of a great jiu-jitsu coach, right? It's because it gets weird. People are weird about these belts, right? Your coach has a black belt with all the white stripes on it, and neither you nor I have enough years left in our life to get there.
I just actually said that to Henry today. Yeah. He goes, "You'll get there." I said,
Probably not. No. Yeah, probably not. But the point is, I think Henry would be really proud if he could ever develop, and which I also don't think this is possible, but if he ever could develop somebody that would be able to give him a run for his money. Because I feel he's super invested legitimately in other people's success. You can do the same thing with leadership. Dan has a team of people that is around him. He's not back there flipping burgers, even though he did do time doing that early on, which I also think is essential, because if you understand all of the things, at least at a peripheral level, I'm not saying you need to, if you own a car dealership, I'm not saying you need to go be able to switch the lug nuts on every type of vehicle, but having an understanding of what it takes to be able to do that. And then you can constantly be empowering people underneath you and training them to take over your role. And the best way for leaders to really test to see how their team is, if they're a micromanager or they're empowering their people, is, and I recommend this to organizations too, because a lot of organizations will have training environments. I want to say, hey, right when you get to a point where a person would normally get up, like the boss would normally get up and make a decision or say something to people, just have them step aside and say nothing and watch what happens. And if the answer is nothing, you have a cultural change that you need to make in your organization. If the leader isn't there for whatever reason and people look around and realize that and somebody steps up and fills that leadership gap, it doesn't mean that they are the leader. It means they're filling the leadership void so the leadership can come back in because maybe they're on the radio, right? Like, and as a tactical commander on the ground, the number of radios that you are talking to, I mean, you're trying to talk back to somebody, report what's going on that's sitting in an air-conditioned tactical operations center. Then you're coordinating with aircraft overhead. Maybe you got a medevac coming in. You're listening to disaggregate units report in on another net. So you got stuff going on. You know what I mean? Like, you're so task saturated. There's no way that you're going to be able to make every single call. But if you've trained your team to do nothing until they hear only your voice, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, that's not leadership.
It's not. But I'm like, the beauty is you can test it. You can create these artificial environments, and then just when they're used to hearing that one voice, just step out of the room and watch what happens. And they'll probably fail. And failure in training is a great thing, not for the point of just saying, "Oh, hey, look at you, you failed," because you see people set up these no-win training scenarios with no point whatsoever other than to show people, "Hey, look at you, you failed." It's like, cool. Is there a learning lesson in this anywhere that I could like maybe get better at? So we trade to failure all the time in the SEAL teams, but it was for a reason. Maybe it was to show a leader when they get so task saturated on one thing that the world can cave in on them. Or like, hey, you need more brevity in your communications. You're like trying to report a Steinbeck novel over the radio, which just doesn't work. So they all have a reason for that. And organizations can do that as well too. And the goal is to not have any one person where, I mean, what if they have a family emergency and you're in the middle of a merger? They have to go, their loved one is in hospice, or COVID. The dude you're waiting on to close the deal, and you're coming in to sign, and the next 3 days pops positive for COVID. What do you do? Do you need to put it off for 2 weeks? Or is your team trained and equipped and empowered to step in and fill that void? A lot of people, they don't want the team to be able to do that because they feel it's a risk to them. They're like, God, I need to be the guy.
And that ain't a leader either.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's an easy one to fall into because your ego gets tied into it, and everybody has an ego. And
I was guilty of that as a young man for sure. I've talked about that before on the podcast. I remember when clients would say, like, "Oh, your guy Drew did such a great job." I'd be like, "That guy works for me." Like in my head,
Super common.
I did all this. Like
Super common.
Yeah. And then years later, it was, that guy's awesome. And I go say, "Hey, I got a nice message from a
and then you want to build 4 more Drews. Because then you can go out and take over the goddamn world. And because that's how you force multiply. One person alone, I don't care what you do, you'll reach a glass ceiling of what you're capable of. And again, so then not only are you the single point of failure, but you're also limited in how much you can actually grow in your breadth and depth and scope.
What's your glass ceiling?
On what issue?
Well, I don't.
I have many.
Here's a loaded question. Are you an overachiever? So as a young boy, you decided you wanted to join the SEAL teams. Then you were like, were you the youngest person ever to go to BUD/S?
No, I was relatively young on the scale, though, for sure. There had been a few people that were younger than me, but I was young. I knew what I wanted to do from a very early age, though. Short answer to your question is no. I do not feel like an overachiever. Most days I feel like an underachiever, if I'm being honest.
So, I mean, like from the outside looking in, it's always easy. Like you look and you see what somebody's doing in their life. And of course, like other people that are not in your life on a daily basis don't always see what goes into it. But it can be daunting because what do we feel like as men? Like, oh, look what this guy's doing. I'm over here just like running a damn bakery.
That's a mistake, though, to even go down that pathway.
But like, for a guy like you, and I'm not stroking you, I'm asking you because I think some people's brains maybe are a little different. Because you just said sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough. Like you became. Is there a higher level of pilot license than yours?
No.
So in a couple of years, you decided you weren't flying airplanes. Mm-hmm. Did you fly as a kid, like Cessnas or anything? No. So in a span of how many years?
From when I was doing it seriously, I went from my private to the ATP in about 3 years.
So what people create a whole career out of, you did as a part-time thing while doing another job.
Well, the license itself is I mean, the people who make it a career hold that license, but they hold that license with tens of thousands of flight hours. I was able to get the hourly requirement to get that license isn't incredibly high. And I would say I was pretty much doing it full time for that short period of time. I just didn't turn it into a career.
But you could go work for FedEx or United if you wanted to, or
Yes.
or some private company flying little jets around with people in the back drinking champagne or whatever.
Yes. Yes. And I did that for a bit, and it wasn't what people would think it was.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. Bus driver in the sky is.
The bigger the airplane, the bigger the suitcase. And you're gone for long periods of time. You can basically write off any of your holiday time period because that's when you'd be shuttling other people around. And that's actually why I ended up stopping doing it, because the unpredictability of the schedule.
But my point is, you just like for fun did what some people do in a career or make a career out of. You just kind of did it in your free time. And I'm not making it sound like it was nothing, but you had another career.
Yep.
You had done a whole career in your special operations life. And like those are not little things. So do certain things come easier to you? Like in the time I've known you, I think you had just got a blue belt when I met you. And you've advanced now to
Shitty purple belt.
well, that
Subpar. I mean, Henry calls me a substandard
no, but you're.
subpar purple belt.
I've had this conversation with you before, and it's what I'm getting at or driving at is this. Well, first of all, nobody that ever usually comes from your community doesn't have some of these common traits. Except I know a bunch of guys that were SEALs or Green Berets that are turds in life now.
Oh, I worked with some dum-dums.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
they're
just
out
had
there.
like the thing to do that job.
We're talking some sling blade.
Just shut up and eat your checkers.
Yeah,
That's funny.
The community, there's a certain level of capability that the screening process is looking for, but it's more a physical and mental grind. There's no like educational or intelligence component really. So there's some really high performers, and there's some window lickers, man. And it's so.
So what drives you? Is it to?
I like hard things. Is
Okay,
the short
so-
answer to
so-
that. I think it's what I like about jiu-jitsu so much. And you know, the pilot thing is, so
I just thought of that as an example because that's not an easy thing to do.
it actually wasn't that hard though. So a lot of that is people have to look at aviation. So in the military, like BUDS as an example. So I taught a second phase. I was a second phase instructor when I went back and was an instructor for 18 months. And I taught it's diving. And we start with open circuit. So when you exhale, there's bubbles versus closed circuit where it's a loop and you can be super sneaky.
Sneaky ninjas
Even though it's
underwater.
been done one time in the history of like being sneaky. But this test that we do underwater, it's pretty horrendous. I mean, you're down there and you're ripping hoses out of the mouth, you're tying knots, you're introducing inhalation problems and exhalation problems. And
So the student has to keep solving these problems.
they have to solve the problem, but they have to solve it in order. And it all starts when because I gave this brief so many times. If the mouthpiece is in your mouth, you start here. If it's out of your mouth, you start back on the back of your regulator. And if you reverse that, you fail the test right there. And there's a lot of stress. And it's an environment where if I rip your mouthpiece out, I get to decide when you breathe. And I know when you inhale and I know when you exhale because I can watch the bubbles come out. So if I want to crank the pressure on you, I can absolutely do that. And so you can take these kids to a place where they are absolutely redlined on pressure. And what we expect of them is to follow procedures regardless of what's going on in the world around them. And that's mostly what the military is, from free fall to being a sniper, to talking on the radio, to controlling close air support. You're given a 9-line. It's always the same thing. You don't skip any steps regardless of what's going on. I mean, you can do emergency close air support, but it's still a very choreographed back and forth, and there's a reason for that. That's for people's safety. Aviation is all checklist based. So you follow the procedure, right? Like it actually fell right into the mentality that I had been working on anyway. So it's like, if this happens, do this. So I'm type rated in a Gulfstream, G4 to be specific, which is a 2-pilot aircraft. And the guy on the left generally is the pilot in command. The guy on the right is the second in command. And when emergencies, like they have this huge screen, and when shit starts showing up in amber and like red, you need to start paying attention to it. But what do? You grab a checklist and you flip to the page and you start working through it together. So you're not up there like just putting stuff together and being creative. I'm like, today, Nikki, I'm going to fly the airplane like this. It's like, no, you always...
This is happening, so it says, go make sure this is...
You always turn the autopilot on at this time. This is our landing checklist. This is our landing procedures. This is our brief for takeoff, our brief for landing. And so it's very, very systematic. So I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is largely what I have been doing already. Then you look at jiu-jitsu. I mean, legitimately, all I try to do is what the coaches tell me to do. Like, do exactly this, and I try to do exactly that. It's almost checklist, there is much more creativity because now we have another human being that can do some really weird stuff at weird times. But if you think about it, it's actually pretty sequential. You know what I mean? Like passing, as an example. You got to get past the feet, you got to get past the knees, you got to get up towards the hips. It's like, okay. Like you're giving me a checklist of things that I can follow. So
what's next? What's next?
Correct.
What's next?
And if you come from a world for almost 2 decades where that was rewarded and that's what they expected from you, you find these other systems or things that you can do that have an essence of that. I think it does, not that it makes it easier, but you might take to it a little bit faster.
In what I do, I use aviation constantly as an analogy because of those checklists.
Yeah. They're not up there reinventing the wheel.
And redundancies. The redundancies that are involved in mechanics for aviation. I got a buddy that ran a hangar fixing planes for years, and just the way that they know where the parts were made. They know when the part was made. They know who the guy who put the part in the box and who put the part on the plane and what wrench was used, and all like that is such a detailed way of approaching a task that I think oftentimes we're just so flippant when we I'm paying attention. You ain't paying attention to shit, man.
Correct.
Yeah. Back to the jiu-jitsu. Like, did you feel what he just did? Yeah. No, you didn't, because he keeps doing the same thing to you over and over again. Your head's up your ass. You're not thinking about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels there. And so things don't generally come easy to me, but what I have been able to do in my life is, jiu-jitsu is a good example, or aviation. I was able to focus an inordinate amount of time on that and do a very deep dive. I don't do well at having 15 hobbies and allocating whatever that would be 6% of my attention to each. 2% of my attention
I'm a
to
math
each.
guy too.
Yeah, I do much better with like one thing that I'm working on or one thing that I really like, and I put a lot of time into that.
All right, so that kind of threshed out of my question. So I'm assuming when you were doing your time in the SEALs, that's what you were doing. You weren't also doing macrame and acoustic guitar at night and stuff. I was completely and utterly engrossed in that job. And other people I've had on my podcast, military guys, looking back at that time period in my life, from my teens to my late 30s, everything suffered before the job. You were so utterly focused on the job, on the task at hand, just completely engrossed in it, that the last thing that was going to ever suffer was the job itself. And you watch it destroy families, you watch it destroy people, and it's certainly not an excuse, but it gives you a better understanding of why those things can happen. Was it worth it?
I don't know, man. It's I spent a lot of time thinking back. I mean, it was certainly rewarding. I loved doing the job that I was able to do. I love the people that I was around. It did shape how I view the world, even from a task completion perspective, and and how I take what I learned and I apply it to everything else that I do. I don't know. I would love to sit here and be like, oh yeah, we made the world a lot safer. I feel like the best analogy would be there's a dam and it's got a bunch of little water spigots coming out. The best I think I did was put my finger in a couple of the holes to stop the water in the hopes that there was an engineer working on a better dam, but I'm not so sure there was.
So when did you come up with that? Did you try to quantify this at one point in life? And
shortly after getting out, you have this kind of like existential crisis of who the you are, because you're like, what do I do for a living now? And I mean, and I have kids too. I mean, my oldest son now is, if there was ever to be a draft that would come around, I have one son that's of age and I have another one that's a year and a half short of that. And, more than anything, what I wanted to make sure is that my kids didn't have to go over and finish what it is that I had started, even though it wasn't my decision to start it. I was over there to at least try to finish it. And I'm not so sure we accomplished that. No? Yeah.
That's got to be kind of a bummer after that much sweat and blood.
Well, we were really good at our job. And when you have, you're targeting an organization of people that realize once they get together, people are going to come knocking. And by that, I mean not politely knocking. So they became very disaggregate. And now you look at those ideologies, whether it be, ISIS or ISIL or whatever they want to call themselves these days. I mean, it's splintered and it's in 40, 50, 60 countries. Mm-hmm. So maybe the overall number might be less, but it's spread out more. You know what I mean? It's a more...
Like a grease fire.
It's a more complex problem. And I think a lot of that has to do with how effective we actually were at our job. We forced them, just like, again, we can go back to jiu-jitsu. If somebody hits you with the same thing like 5 times in a row and you're not sitting there going, how the do I stop this from happening? Oh, I'm going to get on my side next time. And then it doesn't work anymore. Then they change, but you know what I mean? So then you've changed and then they change. It's just constant back and forth. So yeah, I don't know if it was worth it. It's the most honest answer I can give you.
Can't go back anyway.
Cannot go back anyway. I'm very grateful and appreciative for the experiences that I did have. It colors how I view the world and just about everything. It gives me context for a lot of stuff. Like, perfect example, not to say that oppression doesn't exist in the United States of America, but I could take people on a little tour of other places where oppression is incredibly real. And perhaps they would think twice about, bitching about how oppressed they are while drinking an $8 coffee on their $1,000 smartphone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We've now got this whole generation. My kids, your kids were born after 9/11.
Yep.
And I've got a granddaughter now who will probably, just like our parents growing up with grandparents that were World War II age, that it's all just going to be distant history. But
I also wonder how the history will be portrayed.
That's a very interesting point, because I see you got so much stuff on social media. I'll put something out and I'll see somebody comment, and the version of history just 5 years, 10 years later, like, oh, what, we're going to go back there and just destroy a bunch of people in a place we shouldn't have been. Like, wait a minute. Like, wait a minute. Do you understand? But
then you dig in and like the person is maybe, because I'll see that sometimes too, and I'll you'll go through the spiral of clicking on their username, and it's like, probably weren't alive,
right?
Or you were 5 or 6 years old, or under 10. I'm like, I get it. I can, and not that I'm not going to say I agree with your perception, but I can try to empathize where you are coming from for this, and then that helps me not try to jump down people's throats online. I like to make sassy comments, not...
Sassy, yeah. I read some of your comments sometimes. It's a waste of energy to try to...
Not sass. Sass is never wasted. Anger can be wasted online, but not sass.
What I was saying is a waste is trying to go to that person and re-educate them, because that's...
Can't do it on those mediums. Yeah. It has to be in person.
Yeah, you have to sit down and say, hey, look, here's a body of knowledge on this topic that maybe you haven't...
Oh, and they'll say, I Googled it. And of course, the question is, did you click on anything other than the first result? Mm-hmm. Generally, the answer is no.
I wrote something the other day about 3 philosophers. One of them, a French philosopher, and a guy like 4 days later. All I was saying is that our founders took these guys' philosophies, and it was what crafted our Constitution, our Declaration. And this guy sent me a message, and he said that one of them, he goes, that guy was an asshole. And I'm like, okay,
yeah.
So then he went on in this tirade, and I said, well, what you're saying, some of that stuff is not untrue, but it's not the point. All I was saying is our founders looked at what these people did, and I said, you're looking at somebody that lived hundreds of years ago and judging them through the optic of today. It's hard to do.
Yeah, we will probably look like assholes too 300 years into the future when people look back.
Yeah.
Going, why were we such cavemen back then?
I don't know. Although I think there's something to be said for being a caveman. Like today, we were in a room with 30, 40 people who all have jobs and lives, and instead of watching cartoons and eating cereal on a Saturday morning, we put pajamas on and...
Try to murder each other?
Yeah, and get hot and sweaty for hours and try to rip each other's arms off. So I think there's something lost there too, where we try to get so civilized that we forget what we really are. We're animals, man.
Yeah, I think the idea that we're going to live in a totally peaceful... Somebody was asking... I actually answered a question about this yesterday. Was Friday, so it posted yesterday. It was, how do you come to grips with there being evil in the world, especially when you have kids. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about, would I want to live in a world where there was no evil? And I actually landed on no. I wouldn't want to, because we would be the most lazy, slovenly species on the face of the planet. And then what would end up happening is somebody would say something like people didn't agree with, and it would become the most egregious evil. You know what I mean? Like there would always be a...
We kind of have that.
Well, and let's be honest,
that.
we live in a world that for most people is really rounded. And when rounded edges and like things are nerfed and everybody is, doing everything they can to avoid danger. And I'm actually, I'm glad. I'm not saying I think people need to run into a bayonet charge by any stretch, but I think that having evil it'd be the same as if you lived on a beautiful tropical island, and the sun rose and it set and it was beautiful and you're like, God, this must be what it's like for everybody in the world. Like, that's not a good spot. And then let's say you work in sex crimes and law enforcement and your entire day is all
looking at horrible things.
Shit. And it needs to be like, human beings are the worst ever and everybody is like this. That's also not a correct position. But I think, so I don't think either of those are the great place to live. I think they can both give context, but, we need to have, there has to be, I think humans do better if there is at least a small percentage of risk and danger, because they will do things like seek out your training. They'll invest in, adult snuggle time in geese. You know what I mean? Why will a lot of people do that? Because they're like, okay, the odds are in my favor, but you know what? I want to be prepared. And that's what I want people to be able to do, is to seek that out and be as hard to kill as possible. And then hopefully never have to use any of that stuff. But I think that a lot of people do that because they realize the danger is there. If that was gone, man, I think we'd be like a species of like 500-pound like land whales.
What was that movie where they had all the food they wanted and eventually they were all like riding around on like little electric, it was a kid's cartoon, they were all on little electric scooters and they all got so obese. They had all the food they wanted. I can't remember what it was, but it was not evil, but life became so easy that life became meaningless because it was just like eat and just so like I think that's kind of what you're saying. Without some struggle, there's
I like the struggle. I don't understand the mindset of people who try to make life struggle less. Like, it should just be, everything for everybody at all times. It's like, God, you're just going to make weak people.
What gives you stress?
Time, money, relationships.
Time, like not enough time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've probably got more days behind me than I do in front of me.
So you think about, is it do more with the time I have, or is it like, ooh, I don't want to go yet? Or
I mean, I'm going to live, my goal is to, if you use the analogy of you getting one lap around the racetrack, I definitely want to be the car that's being like pushed across the finish line with a bunch of bumps, the windshield's completely gone, probably missing a quarter panel, as opposed to the pristine, hybrid or electric car. Yeah. Making its way around and they did everything they could to avoid any bumps and bruises and dings on the car. I mean, nobody knows how much time you have. It's funny, it's right. It's the most valuable thing that we have, but it's free. And you never realize how valuable it is until you have an experience like, oh, well, that guy just died. And you're like, I bet you that guy had a bunch of plans and shit he wanted to do this year, or was thinking about Christmas or his kids. So, I don't stress about it a lot. I try to focus on, and then maybe that's why I like to do deep dives on the stuff that I do, is I want to pursue it to the farthest limit that I can and the time that I have allocated for it.
So you soak up the joy.
I try to.
Yeah.
But stress is real for everybody. There's financial stress with starting, the coffee shop. It's a large amount of money involved in, and people are like, oh, it must be nice to be able to write a check. It's like, asshole, we're borrowing money.
Must be nice was like one of my favorite things to hear from people.
Must be nice to be worried about the repayment structure. You're like, yeah, you want to join us on that, asshole? Like,
what's your social security number? Let me get that.
Welcome aboard. I'll be happy to share the stress with you, and also the financial burden.
Right.
So there's the business stress. I got divorced. I went through a very long divorce process that really strained the relationship with my oldest son. I was very stressed about that for a long time. He and I have since reconnected and are doing substantially better.
Good.
But I mean, I'm not immune to stress by any stretch. And I think a lot of people, we all have the same stress, maybe just to a different degree. It depends. Are you more of do you have a bigger business? You might have some more business stress, or interpersonal relationship. It's all the same stuff.
What are you scared of? Not heights.
I'm not actually a fan of heights.
No.
Like, I don't like walking around on roofs.
That's different.
But it's still heights.
Yeah.
I stopped getting scared of heights when I'm at a height that I know I could open a base jumping parachute safely. And of course I have one on.
I was going to say, there's a prerequisite.
There's a prerequisite that I have
Right.
said parachute on my back. Because then you're like, yeah, I'm going to be fine. But it's that intermediate, like the rock climbing height where you're maybe like 1 or 2 pitches up. You're like, God damn it. I'm definitely going to be in a
swing
wheelchair.
my head right into that. Yeah.
This is definitely a wheelchair event or I'm going to die. So it's not that I'm not scared of heights. I'm okay with them once we get beyond a certain degree. Now, the only thing that really keeps me up at night is the thought of my kids or people that I care about, because it is more than just my kids, but people that I care about being in a situation where they would need my help and not being able to be there to provide it. That's probably the only thing that I would say that I'm actually scared of.
Yeah. So as a leader, how can you provide that help pre-event?
Teach them.
There you go.
I mean, kids are a great example, especially driving age kids. I mean, how many flat tires have you had in your life? Bunch,
I can't even think of
a bunch. Or, how many people have you driven by that are having an issue with the flat tire? And if you don't, let's say you have a young child, getting ready to be able to drive, and all you do is you teach them how to actually drive the car. And they go and take their test and like, yay, you're a licensed driver. Like, dude, if you don't ever teach your kids how to change a tire, like you might be literally creating that situation where they break down somewhere where you wouldn't want them to be and they don't know what to do. And then here comes, creepo, and so what can you do? Contingency plan with your kids and teach them about that. Put a first aid kit in the car for them. Hey, man, like I live in Montana, so trucks are basically mandatory. That's what I tell myself, at least. Most trucks have got great cab space. Dude, throw a space blanket in the back.
And good fuel economy like yours.
Yes, of course I do. But it's like, hey, throw a jacket underneath the rear seat. Like, you're probably never going to need this, but if you do, you're going to be so happy that you have it. Throw some toe straps back there. Throw a small recovery kit back there for another vehicle. Like you said, a med kit. Like, have some tourniquets and empower them by teaching them the stuff that you know. And then also make sure that they realize, like, hey, even though like you're capable of doing this, don't ever be afraid to hop on the phone. And regardless of what I'm doing, as long as I'm in obviously the same area that you're at, like I'm in the car to come help you. And if I get there and you've already got it sorted, like you're going to get a high five. I'm like, awesome. Now let's talk about, you need to put everything back the way that it was. You need to rejock everything. You got to get another tire. But if you don't teach people that stuff, and again, I think kids are a great example of that, they're just at the mercy of the world around them. And the best thing that I think you can do as a parent is, in as many areas as possible, don't allow them to be a victim of what the world might throw at them.
Kind of circles back to your world without evil. Not that evil is the same as a flat tire, but how many times do you hear a parent say, I just want my kid to have a better life than me? And then they create this human that's so fragile. They
have no coping skills.
I don't have a cell service and AAA is not getting my...
Yeah. Or it's like...
Mommy didn't buy me run flats.
I don't have cell service, so I can't post on Instagram about this flat tire.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, that's a weird thing. Although there is this huge resurgence of people like practicing bushcraft skills, and of course you just things you said like medical stuff. There's guys doing like overland stuff in trucks and Jeeps and things like that.
And if people want to go that deep, that's awesome. I mean, the reality is you could have a really convenient, like maybe small duffel bag for probably, you could do it for under $100.
Yeah.
And it can be just forgotten. People who do the overland stuff, like go as deep as you want. The TCCC as deep as you want to. You don't have to be an expert in that stuff to be able to actually be an asset to yourself or to other people.
I dig that.
Yeah.
What do you want to be remembered for when you're dead and gone as a broken down car with shattered windshield that you described?
Man, I think at the end of the day, or the end of the lap, I would be happy if I was remembered as somebody who actually gave more than they ever took.
Do you feel you're doing it?
I do the best I can. You know, the pod.
Weak answer the best I can.
Well, I mean, it's an honest answer though. I mean, the podcast is a great medium, and it's enriching for me because I can hear about other people's experiences and how they were able to achieve amazing things.
You do a good job at it too.
Well, and it's a tool that can. I mean, the entertainment aspect for people, put that aside. It can empower them. It can teach them. It can enrich their lives as well, for nothing, right? For free. The leadership stuff, I really enjoy doing that because it's the single most powerful tool that I think human beings have access to. And it starts with how you think about yourself. If people don't think of themselves as a leader, expect them to be able to be like, hey, I'm in charge. They'll just be like, somebody gonna handle that?
Yeah, if you don't believe it, I'm not going to believe it.
So, I mean, other than that, you know, let's say you were to do, I mean, you do seminars. It's like, unless you want to do 50,000 people seminars, you know, like and you'll still, even then, never be able to touch as many people as you would want to. So I try to be at least as positive and as impactful as I can be on whatever scale that I can be. And, you know, it's, as it continues to grow, that's awesome. But at some point, I'm sure it would peak out. And then, you know, I do the best I can.
You want to be remembered for a guy that gave more than he took, and you're using the podcast to help pass that on.
I try to.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So if people are not now listening to your podcast, where do they get there?
Anywhere you could find a podcast.
No, what do they get?
What do they get there?
Yeah, what do they get there? What are they learning there? What are you talking about? What are you doing?
I think it depends on, well, I mean, I don't know what they would necessarily go there to look for because everybody comes at things from a different perspective.
Like what's your shtick?
I don't have one. I like to have conversations with interesting people. I'm fascinated by other people's journey and how they are able to achieve the things that they have. And then on Fridays, 2 years ago, I was getting this volume of questions and people asking me for my advice, which is shockingly funny.
Why?
Because I'm a functioning moron.
See, when you say things like that, I know you're not being self-deprecating. You've achieved so much stuff that average men would dream of.
Well, average people should shoot to be less average.
I'm not, but I mean, clearly you're not a moron.
Most of the things that I have done can be tied directly back to like the checklist thing that I was telling you about. They're very systematic
So it takes
approaches.
an intelligent guy to follow the damn checklist then.
Or somebody not smart enough to try to create their own system. The realization that like, you know what, I'm just going to do what people...
You did some good math. You divided like two numbers, one into the other. Or something.
Yeah, but it wasn't great because I think there was like a round off error in there.
So go on. I cut you off.
But no, so people were like flooding my inbox and they were asking questions. So I'd said about 2 years ago, I was like, I'll just do a Friday episode. And so people will submit for questions. I mean, shit, it's everything like, how do I deal with domestic violence? What are your thoughts on Ukraine? Parenting, divorce. And like some of them I'll just dedicate to relationship advice. And I'm like, obviously don't ask me, the divorced dude with a strained relationship with his oldest son. People are just like, what should I do in my marriage? I'm like, if you're going to ask me this, I'm going to give you an answer.
I'm going to lay it on you. Yeah.
Not knowing anything about it. So it really depends. I mean, I try to talk very openly about mental health, and specifically in the first responder, LEO, military world, the benefit that it has had on my life of actually talking to counselors throughout the course of my life, military service, obviously during the divorce, and even afterwards. It's just good to have I find it's good to have a neutral third party that you can bounce shit off of. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't understand how the brain works, but there are people who have dedicated their life to that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know what people are going to get from it. I get a lot of emails from people saying, hey, what you talking openly about what was happening with your son actually made me want to go and talk to one of my parents.
That's cool.
And I mean, I've gotten probably more than 6, but less than a dozen at this point, people saying, I chose not to kill myself after listening to your podcast.
That's heavy shit, man.
It is heavy shit. And the thing is, I don't create any of the episodes with that in mind at all. I just try to have open conversations with the people who sit across from me and give my honest feedback on the questions that they ask. So I don't necessarily know exactly what people would get out of it. Because for me, it's a journey of discovery as well. Still trying to figure myself out.
It's amazing. We never know like what the far-reaching effects of our actions are. You know, as you're talking, in my time in politics, I'd talk with candidates or people that were deciding to run for something, thinking about it, and you see how people act, how they behave, and I have this little mantra in my head: leaders lead. That's like how I.
Yep.
And it's like, strong people are strong. It's just a stupid kind of like super condensed thought, but you watch and like, okay, that guy's leading. I can see he's got or she's got some potential, so I'll help. But so the world craves somebody to follow. We all do. Even if you're Andy Stumpf or you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, we all at some point need somebody to like when you were learning to fly. You didn't just say, I'm just going to dream this up. You needed a flight instructor who led you on this path. And
you got to choose wisely, though.
Yeah.
Like you look at, people I think will often look to social media platforms for leaders. I think it's a really bad sign. I'll use one particular example. I don't know this person at all, and I'm not saying anything negative, but I don't think that Kim Kardashian should be one of the most followed people on social media.
Well,
but the thing is, my point is, be cautious who you choose to follow.
Yeah, for sure.
Because not everybody has the purest of intentions. A lot of people are doing things that are very self-serving, that can be disguised as something else. And
you mentioned some celebrity vets, and no reason to name anybody, but I see guys where it's like, you don't care about the people paying you or buying your shirts or coming to your classes. You care about you because they're passing on garbage, and you see the people behind closed doors. There's tons of that, but it's kind of like televangelism kind of stuff where they're just selling good vibes and there's nothing behind it.
I would caution people, and I do caution people, just because somebody was a veteran, I mean, obviously that means that they served in the military, but that doesn't mean they know anything about anything else. There's right now quite a few veterans that are running for Congress. Mm-hmm. And in my own experience, at least, I can't say that anything that I did in the 17 years that I was in the SEAL community necessarily prepared me to go represent people in Congress. Can I take the leadership lessons and all of those things with me forward? Yes. But the selection process is not perfect in these organizations as well. So it might seem flashy on a resume, but just do your due diligence and use with caution. I see a lot of people who will give people who have the term veteran, specifically and especially from the special operations community, they will give them a pass on shit that they should not. Like you're saying, the televangelism, not giving a shit about things that they actually should, being very self-serving. And if you're looking at it with an objective eye or a critical eye, you're like, God damn, it's very obvious what they're doing. But people will defend it like, you can't say anything negative about vets. Like,
yeah, you know what he did?
Like, you can't, but I know.
Yeah, but that's very telling of like what people want. And kind of goes back to like your point about the evil in the world. Like, all right, there it is. Now it's your job to go thresh out.
Yeah.
I had John Frankel here.
Yep.
And he said something, his closing thought was, find a good teacher in whatever it is you want to learn. And so that kind of goes with your point of like, pick a good one.
Yeah.
He said, find a good teacher and then follow them. Like that was it. Like, like go all in. And it's like, it sounds so simple, but
yeah.
How many times do people go to the jiu-jitsu gym and then they like, oh, Andy was on top of me in this weird side control thing and it sucked, and Dan told me what to do, but instead I go home and I start YouTubing. I don't, but you just start like, I'm going to go find some secret thing.
You need to find the lowest probability but highest risk move you can do. Not only for you, but for your training partner. And then explode into it.
Yeah, but that's what we do.
No, that's not what we do.
But we as
how much YouTube
humanity
jiu-jitsu Googling have you done in YouTube videos?
I don't.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I might do is like maybe somebody said, hey, did you see? I don't watch like MMA much, but somebody's like say, hey, that thing I was explaining to you was in this match, so I'll maybe go watch.
That's a different example.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people who like go to every class, and I swear to God, they dedicate 3x the amount of time to look up obscure shit. Mm-hmm. Moves that it's like, hey man, you literally have no guard. Why are you learning the inverted double butterfly unicorn?
Man, my neck hurts. Yeah.
Maybe just work on your guard.
So that kind of goes back to the thing that you are saying, how you approach life, how you go all into a thing, and
yeah, and that's why I really like the way Henry teaches. He mentioned it today. He's looking for the most efficient and effective way to get from point A to point B. I don't do well with 14-step anything that if there's an interruption in any of those 14 steps, it doesn't work.
It all falls apart.
I'm much more interested in like ABC, where even if B is a little bit off, you can correct and you're still right.
Go back to B. And
yeah, go with the most efficient and effective and strip away all the other bullshit.
I dig that.
Yeah. That's what I like the most about his jiu-jitsu. It's just, I mean, another way to describe it would be very brutal.
It hurts.
It hurts, but it doesn't hurt because it's complicated.
No, it hurts because he's on top of you.
Yeah, and gravity works.
Yeah.
And weight is actually, there's a reason why there's weight classes, people. Anybody who's like, weight and strength doesn't matter. It's just like.
Yeah. Yeah. How much do you weigh?
They both do.
Yeah, come here.
Yeah, it's a little guy thing.
Find
to
me a
say.
90-pound person and let's test that theory.
Yeah.
So, kind of the synopsis here. You've gotten out. You've done all these various rad, cool things. What's next? You're going to be a coffee purveyor.
Yep, I'm going to sell brown water to people. I'm going to start jumping again, skydiving wise. I think I really do like base jumping. I mean, it's
So dangerous.
well,
So dangerous.
it's a calculated risk.
It's so dangerous.
It can be dangerous. But man, like I think about it almost every day, like these trips I did to Switzerland where you're just standing on the edge of a cliff in a nylon suit and you bomb off.
I'm Superman.
You bomb off and you're just carving through terrain. Like it's hard to describe flying 120 miles an hour.
I've watched the GoPro videos.
Face first, and you're just like, it's amazing. So I'm not going to say that's totally off the table, but I'm going to be doing some skydiving stuff. I'm actually doing a jump trip to Iceland in July, which I can't. I mean,
There's some cool topography
that's
there.
like just some pictures that'll be able to come from that. I also have my favorite wingsuit is a full-on just American flag made off of the patch that I wore for 10 years. So it has some like distress stuff. So I'm gonna probably have to invade Iceland with that just for a few jumps.
So you broke the record for the longest distance flown.
It was the
18
distance flown before deploying the parachute, and then the absolute distance where they add the canopy distance as well.
Okay, so you flew like a flying squirrel for like 18 miles.
Just over 18. Yep.
And then opened the canopy and flew some more.
Not much more. I deployed my parachute slightly lower than I should have.
It was like 18 miles.
18.2, something like that.
And then you jumped from 36,000 feet.
36,500 feet.
So it was like 60 below zero up there. Or
It was very cold. Basically like here yesterday.
How long? Yeah, it was cold. How long until it was like bearable, the temperature? How long were you? This was like 8 minutes or something?
Yeah. Okay. So it's what is it, about 2 degrees per 1,000 feet. So it was a bit. It was a touch.
And I'm sure you didn't have any exposed skin.
I didn't, but I was also wearing shorts and a t-shirt underneath.
Underneath it?
Because it was summertime in Northern California.
Oh.
So it was like 100 on the ground, negative 60 above. I probably could have layered better, but again, I don't claim to be the smartest person.
Any frostbite on you?
No, it wasn't that bad.
So
I mean, it was cold, but at the same time, every foot that I got lower, in theory, the temperature was getting warmer. And then by the time I deployed my parachute, it was damn near 100 degrees.
Somebody beat that record.
They did, yeah. Kyle Lopres, and I'm sorry if I said that name incorrectly, but he was a Marine Corps, I think he was an Apache pilot.
How far did he go?
Like, it was less than it was like a point something farther.
Is he heavy like you? You're a big guy. Like
I've never met him in person, I don't know.
Maybe if we put you on like a all oatmeal diet for 6 months.
No, I mean, so I'm 6 feet tall. Like somebody who was like probably 5'6" would have a hard time because you're talking surface area. It's a wing, right?
Okay.
And there's a lot of factors. Like, did he or I, who had a greater tailwind? I think he exited from the same altitude. There's a lot of factors that go into it. How you fly the suit, because it's all body position. It's all tactile feedback. So if we were identical height, identical weight, we still could have a very drastic difference in the distance traveled, based off the symmetry of our body and that's what is hard about that jump, is it's a static hold. Your arms are, I mean, they're swept back a little bit, but you
like this?
You're holding onto some grippers, so your arm is kind of off to the side.
What's the gripper?
I actually don't know what it's made of, but it's
like what is it? Like it's what you're holding?
It's on the edge of the wing, and
Okay.
it allows you can basically put it in between your thumb and your index finger. It's something you can just hold on to.
Okay.
But I would, for anybody, just stand up straight and grab a 2.5 pound weight and just hold it up at a 45 for 8 minutes.
Just like this, you're saying?
For 8 minutes, and let me know how that feels. And so the more you start contorting your body, the glide ratio of your suit goes down. So you could have two people that are physiologically exactly the same. If one can hold a better body position, at some point, they're going to go off, and this guy's going to start taking off.
Okay.
So there's a lot of factors that go into it, more than just, I would say, height and weight.
You're going to try to beat him?
I don't really have any desire to.
No.
No, I would rather, like the Iceland trip is going to be, I think it's Men's Journal that's going to do a documentary or a content piece around it. I'd rather do stuff like that, where I'm just jumping with some buddies, cool footage. Leah, Erica, and Denver, they're coming on the trip as well too. So we're going to get to do, the jumping, it's like 2 jumps a day, which honestly is less than an hour. And then go around and I'd rather do stuff like that.
I hear they have terrible food there.
I've heard that it's largely like pickled fish.
Yeah, like rotten fish.
Yeah.
Dan and Katie were there. Ask them.
I'm not into that type of thing.
But you'll see some good scenery.
Yeah, it'll be worth it. Like, we're doing the whole ring around the island, so I think there's going to be some volcano action.
Awesome.
Like we're going to land on the beach, like some black sand. It'll be really cool.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And you've got a new studio that's coming?
Working on it. So along with the coffee shop that'll be finished up in November, I'm going to have a fulfillment, I want to say warehouse, but that's not actually what, it's a space. And in that space, it's all actually based around the podcast studio. So kind of upgrading the acoustics. I'll get, you have a really nice light system in here. I'll finally put that in there once it's all fixed. And then the guy who edits my videos now, after the episode is done, I'm going to steal a page from Rogan's book and actually have him in the room doing the live camera switching, and then he can, look stuff up as well. And then it's done. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that will be tail end of this year as well too, but just still trying to do with the things that I do and that I'm interested in, just trying to do it to the best of my ability.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. We ask everybody that comes on, if the people that you've been talking to never see you, they never meet you, they never hear your name again, what would you leave them with? Buy Black Rifle coffee.
Now I would say go out and be the best version of yourself.
Ooh.
And that's not found by taking the easy path. In anything you do, it starts off like in the first thing in the morning, right? When your alarm goes off. You have an easy choice and a hard choice. Not that it's like hard, but do you hit snooze or do you get up? You go and you work all day long and you take your clothes off and you put them down right next to on the floor next to the washer and dryer, or do you put them in the washer and dryer? Like, an easy choice. Should I eat healthy or should I have this homemade Twix bar at DC Cobb's, which was delightful.
It was good.
However, we earned that with our caloric expenditure.
Yeah, I ate it.
So there's easy choices and hard choices. The best version of yourself is always found through the hard choice. And that's tough. And I fail at that all the time too, but I try to put more circumstances in the victory column than the loss column. But that would be my advice. Go be the best version you can for yourself. It'll impact everybody around you. I'm sure you have people in your life that you find to be inspiring in one way, shape, or form. You like being around them. They're empowering for you to be around. They're enriching to be around. Those aren't the people that are hitting the snooze button all the time. Or maybe they do. Maybe they don't start their day that way, but they're making the vast majority of their choices, the hard choices, which are the impactful ones.
I like that. It's interesting. You hear people, I've asked, 100+ people that question. And more times than not, it's something on that thread. I've got a friend that was a major with CAG, and that's like his thing to everybody, especially kids. Take the hard right over the easy left, go do good. And it's funny though, like some guys will think, like I've got a guy I know, everything has to be perfectly organized. And then just somebody the other day sent me
that's just Albert called OCD.
Yeah, somebody sent me Albert Einstein's desk like that the day he died.
Was it a shit show?
It was horrific. It looked like you took everything out of 10 men's offices and just puked it onto a desk, and it was Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some. We all have things that are imperfect too.
Yeah.
Which is something I think you just got to kind of accept too. But there's a fine line there, because then you just start to accept
You can accept everything right into complacency, and
Yeah.
then you're just, again, orange stained fingers from Cheetos, and 400 pounds on a scooter.
Totally thought about that. Like Kool-Aid lips and shit.
Totally. It's finding TV remote controls and your
Right.
fat rolls.
There that was. I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having me, man.
You guys that have watched, I hope that you got something out of the conversation. And if you haven't followed Andy online, you're Andy Stumpf on Instagram.
With the number 212 at the end.
212, is that like your...
Some asshole had Andy Stumpf before I logged on to Instagram. Yeah.
So why 212?
That was my Buzz class number.
Okay, all right. I knew there was some, had to be something. Or just like some random ass numbers you picked out.
No, in the history of Buds, it's considered to be the hardest class that there's ever been.
Why?
Because I was in it.
Oh, you're such a douchebag. That's funny shit. But go follow, check his stuff out. If you ever make your way out to Montana, you can. When will they be able to go to the coffee shop?
I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to say November 15th,
Of 22.
2022 in Kalispell, Montana.
All right. So anytime in 23, you'll go to Kalispell and get yourself some black.
And if we're not open, send your complaints to Denver at Black Rifle Coffee, Kalispell.com.
Nice, you're a jag-off friend. That's good stuff. Be well, don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them. Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com. Hey, little brother, what do you think of gunfighter gun oil?
I'm gonna have to show you.
Hey, Steve, what do you think of gunfighter gun oil?
Well, Mick,
Hey, Steve, what do you think of gunfighter gun oil?
well, Mick, I have to show you about that. Gunfighter lube. Baby, I had the gunfighter blue. But then I got me some gunfighter lube. Let me tell you about it. Made in the USA. Amazing lubricity. Amazing adhesion, baby. 100% synthetic. But it's gonna last you. Gunfighter gun oil, baby. Took away my gunfighter blue. I'm still working on it, but you know.
So you like the lube?